Hi, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for this webinar about the X factor that makes cyber attacks work. Our speaker today is Maor Hizkiev, BitDam CTO and co-founder, who has strong experience in cyber research, specializing in vulnerabilities and reverse engineering. Before I founded BitDam, Maor served as an officer in an elite unit of the Israel Intelligence Corps, focusing on the offensive side of cyber. Today, he's going to share with us some interesting findings based on this experience and provide us with insights about how to protect from those threats that penetrate our current security solutions and which apparently aren't so rare. If there are any questions during the webinar, please type them into the online chat. We will address them at the end of the presentation. And we strongly encourage you to download the content which is attached to this webinar and try out our free breach and attack simulation tool, which will provide you with tangible insight on your current email security posture. With that, I will now hand it to you, Maor.
Thank you very much. So it's my pleasure to be with you here, and here we go. Okay, so I guess that all of you have heard about Emotet, and I hope that you didn't have a chance to meet it face to face. But for those of you who aren't familiar with it, so Emotet is a ransomware, a very sophisticated one that caused damage of hundreds of millions of dollars to enterprises. It is the ransomware that is behind some very well-known stories. For example, the Florida attack that everyone has heard about before. So Emotet was first introduced in 2014. It is very successful and very widespread. Just to get the size of it, during Q1 of 2019, about 61% of the payloads delivered were Emotet attacks. And actually, if you ask Proofpoint, so they will tell you that almost all payloads delivered on email in Q1 of 2019 were Emotet. It makes you think why, after all those years, it is still so dangerous to organizations. We will get to it in a minute, but for now I can hint that Emotet keeps changing and evolving, and today has over 30,000 variants. I will tell you more about that later in this presentation. So in the past, it was used more for ransomware, but now attackers also leverage it for phishing and credential theft and other attacks. Before, it was sent to victims from random addresses, and today, Emotet comes very often from a person the target has corresponded with before and quotes the bodies of previous email threads between the two. This makes it seem more innocent and allows Emotet to spread even farther. Just a couple of weeks ago, Emotet had been striking again with an email campaign for Halloween. These are spam templates that invite you to a neighborhood party, but actually when you click the attachment for more details, it installs Emotet. Another interesting fact is that the number of healthcare institutions compromised as a result of an Emotet attack keeps growing, especially hospitals. So if you are from a hospital, there is a reason to worry. What makes Emotet so successful, and what's this X factor that makes some of the other attacks so successful too? That's what I'm going to show you in the next 20 minutes or so. So to answer this question, let's try to list some characteristics of Emotet, what we actually know about Emotet. So first, it uses legitimate email accounts of existing businesses and using existing email threads with legitimate content. It uses a short list of targets, so it won't mess space all over the world. And it is rapidly changing IOCs, like IP addresses, hashes of files, and so on. But the real question is, why is it working? This is one of the most effective malwares out there. So shouldn't the security solution know how to handle it? By the way, Emotet is just an example, but there are other campaigns that are also sophisticated and use similar characteristics. We're talking about Emotet only because it is the most famous one, and other malwares are copying its characteristics to become as effective. For example, Stop ransomware has a known variant named DJView. So DJView uses AES encryption and has more than 100 different extensions to infected files. Stop malware was first identified like 2 years ago in the end of 2017, and since then we've seen new variants of it all the time. Some of the variants even give the victim a 50% discount if they contact the threat actor and buy the decryption tools for $490 within 30 days. A real bargain. Drydex. This is the second one that I would like to mention. So this is like a group of banking trojans with many variants, seen in phishing emails mainly and ransomware. It uses evasion techniques, showing new obfuscation capabilities that help it bypass antiviruses. And although it was first released in 2011, new never seen before variants keep coming and bypass most security solutions. Just earlier this month, Drydex attack has taken down the networks of 2 companies in Spain as it was used in a ransomware attack. The last example I would like to provide you is regarding GandCrab. So GandCrab ransomware is a RAS, ransomware as a service, and it actually shows that automation is the cornerstone of this attack family. And it was so successful that in June 2019, the authors of GandCrab actually said that they're shutting down after they earned about $2 billion. They just decided to retire and they made enough profit, and they can go enjoy by the pool. Just for the reference, GandCrab's authors had the same revenue of Dunkin' Donuts, and it's about $1.3 billion per year. And I can only guess that their margins were much higher. So now we opened a poll for you. So I'll let you a few seconds just to fill in the answers. Okay. So in order to understand why Emotet and all those other threats are so successful, we should first try to cover what the security vendors are using. So let's talk a bit about reputation services and threat hunting services that are a common practice today and have been in the security industry for quite some time. So a reputation service is used by having sensors around the world that record the fingerprint of a file, for example, and once this fingerprint distribution crosses a certain threshold, it is being flagged and should go to a deeper analysis. Reputation services are good when there is a mass spray of an attack. Threat hunting, on the other hand, is not based on quantity. A threat hunting service, when talking about email at least, is a detection engine that wasn't good enough to qualify as a real-time detection because of high false positive rates. But that doesn't mean that it's useless and is used as sort of a flashlight to light the more suspicious parts that maybe were missed. Both of those services are effective, but not always automatic, and might require a human intervention to filter out the false positives before they start blocking email. A more advanced engine is the smart signatures engine. We are all familiar with antivirus signatures, right? A very specific set of bits that can detect a specific attack. But security vendors took it to the next step in using smart signatures that after they qualify a maliciousness of a file, it means that they qualify that the file is malicious. They are not just using the hash of the file to block it the next time they see it, but they are stripping the file to smaller elements and calculating properties, for example, the entropy of a macro. And this is what they are looking for in the future. And the purpose of it is to detect permutation of the same attack. An example of those elements are a macro code or a stream of RTF or PDF files. Stream of a PDF is the, let's call it the basic element that you see inside a PDF. For example, a stream could be an image, A stream could be a table that you have in a PDF. So those are like the basic blocks of those files. We also wanted to check how effective those smart signatures are. So what we did in order to do so is to take a file attack that contains a macro, a known one that was used by an attacker, and we caught it in other environments. And we started changing it a bit. So we started by adding a few benign lines to the macro and sent it. We saw that it was detected. So then we changed the variable names in the macro code, and they still detected it. Then we deleted substantial parts of the macro, and they still detected it, those other security vendors. So even now we can see that those smart signatures are working pretty well. We also noticed that our macro had many comments in it, and we wondered why attackers would leave so many weird comments in their macro. So we deleted them, and surprisingly, now it wasn't detected by the smart signatures. We can infer that security vendors are using some sort of entropy mechanism or other characteristic in order to detect those similar attacks that they have seen before. We can also tell that attackers, unfortunately, already know that, and this is why they added those weird comments. So if we get back to what makes Emotet so successful, besides the fact they are using a short list of targets, so reputation services will take more time to detect, is their automation. They are constantly changing IOCs, so smart signatures, threat hunting services, and other methods won't be able to detect it fast enough. Timing is the key factor here. As we see it, the cycles of those attacks are happening every other week. The attackers developed a new sample base that contains a new obfuscation technique or a new evasion technique, for example. So it will take the vendors about 2 to 3 weeks to develop an engine that can actually detect it. And in order to maximize those samples' lifespan, they are creating permutation of those samples and distributing them. So the more generic method like smart signature or reputation services won't be very effective. Until the security vendors are able to react to it, the attackers already developed a new base of samples with new techniques. Here I've added a small example of these macro strings that I just mentioned. So you can see them now in, let's call it red or purple. You can see the comments that I mentioned, or the benign string that those attackers added, that obviously don't add up to any logical sentence, but for a machine, it does look like a different type, like not similar to what they've seen before, right? This is, again, a live, or I would say a real attack that we detected in customers. And this is an example of attackers' automation work, right? So this macro on the right, what you can see, is used by an Emotet attack. This is eventually this macro will install an Emotet attack, and as you can see, the macro is obfuscated, meaning that they change all the variable names, and it looks like not readable to the human eye, I would say. So obviously, we can rather quickly spot that it is obfuscated. But what we discovered is that the same macro is used in many different files where the hash is different. A hash of a file is considered an IOC, hence the evidences that we see of the changes in IOCs that those attackers are doing. So in a period of just 4 days, we spotted 73 unique samples with the same macro. That is almost 20 different samples per day. The real numbers are probably much higher since we haven't seen all the samples Emotet has released during that period of time. This type of change is exactly what smart signatures are intended to handle. But attackers are reacting to it as well, and they create permutation to those macros. The one on the left is the same Emotet attack to the one on the right. It uses the same obfuscation technique and was sent in the same time span of those 4 days. But the macros are different to a machine. They have different strings in it, so calculation like entropy will yield different results. They have different number of lines in the code, the variable names are different, and so on. So if we see how many attacks are similar to each other, we get to 289 unique samples, more than 70 samples per day. And I hope those examples give you a clue on how rapid and clever those automations by the attackers are. We also wanted to measure exactly how effective secure email gateway solutions are against unknown attacks, and how have you measured it. So some of our customers have the option to subscribe to a service where we send to their environment attacks that we detected in other environments from the past hour, meaning attacks that are used by attackers currently, and then we measure how their security solutions are handling those samples. This graph shows the miss rate of attacks of a leading security solution between November 1st and November 10th. By the way, I've pre-checked, and some of the people in the audience actually use this solution. You can see how many attacks are being missed every day, only because they are not falling into the smart signatures. It ranges between 10% and 60%, depends on how many new attacks there are in the wild. We also measured how much time it takes for a vendor to detect something he previously missed. So once a sample bypasses the solution and reaches the inbox, we resend it until it is blocked. The average time to detect a missed attack is about 18 hours, which is a lot, of course. By the way, the longest lifespan of an attack we've seen so far was 48 hours. So this is the window in which you are in at risk of an active attack that is actually used by attackers at the moment. Another interesting result is from our breach and attack simulation service, or in short, BAS. So what is our BAS? It is a free service that you can use from our website, and once you subscribe to it, we will send you about 100 attacks with different attacking techniques and monitor what was missed and what was detected by your email security, eventually getting a detailed report about your email security posture, as you can see in the image. Those attacks were created by our research team. There are known attacking methods like formula injection or one-day attacks, but the samples are completely new. We are also using permutation techniques similar to what Emotet is using, but less advanced. So each sample actually looks different every time. Using this test, it is easy to measure how your email security can handle attacks we've never seen before. This slide actually shows exactly that. These are the results of customers that used our bot for email. So I will just share a disclaimer, okay, that I don't know how they have configured their solutions or what tier they are paying for, but we did validate the email security solution is the one they specified while registering to the service. As you can see, we have results on G Suite, Office 365, EOP, ATP, Mimecast, Sophos, Barracuda, Symantec, Proofpoint, and Trend Micro. The miss rates are pretty high, which makes sense because those attacks they haven't seen before. So using the data that we've shared with you, we managed to reverse engineer the process that traditional security solutions use in order to handle new trends. So it starts with the first trend spotted in the wild on the left side of the timeline. And now step one is the time it takes for the reputation services or threat hunting services to flag something. So if they see a file being sent 100,000 times in an hour, they can flag it as something interesting to check. It usually takes a few minutes. But the reason Emotet is not spraying the world with the same attack is to expand this time gap and earn more time. It's important to notice that when a reputation service, for example, flags a file, it doesn't mean that attacks can be detected. Why is that? Because the spotted attacks still need to be qualified which is gap number 2 in the diagram. Qualify a maliciousness of a file means that someone or something needs to verify it is not a marketing campaign, for example, or a new feature by Facebook. This process is not always automatic, and sometimes a human intervention is needed. After qualification, vendors know that something is malicious, so they are creating smart signatures from it. They are buying time until they can detect this new method generically, which is gap number 3. Adding a new detection capability takes time, usually weeks, and the vendors don't want their customers to be exposed. The attackers, on the other hand, are using their permutation schemes to evade those signatures. The whole process starts again every other week for each new campaign. So now I'll give you another about 10 seconds to enter to our second poll. This is the last one, I promise. And then we can go and talk about solutions to this issue. Okay, so how BitDam eliminates this gap? As I mentioned before, I was an attacker. And as such, I obviously had to create attacks that will bypass all security solutions. And to be frank, it wasn't a hard job because of the nature of the detection solution. All I had to do was to create something that no one has seen before. In code, there are infinite ways to do it. The last few slides demonstrated why this kind of approach works, and this is exactly what attackers are doing today. So when we started BitDam, we wanted to create a detection engine that isn't relying on the knowledge it has about attacks. This is the only way we can keep up with the new attacking methods that we see every day. So how does it work? What is BitDam approach? So if we look at the landscape of files and links, eventually all of them are used to get open in applications that we are all familiar with, like Microsoft Word, Excel, Adobe Reader, Zip, RAR, browsers, and others. Those applications are provided by well-known vendors, and there are groups of developers behind them that actually wrote the code for those applications. So when you open a doc file, you trust that the only code that will run in your machine is the code of Microsoft Word application that was written by Microsoft developers. But when an attack is taking place, at some point in time, there will be an alien code that will run on the machine that was written by the attacker and not by Microsoft developers. This is exactly what we leverage in order to detect that this is a malicious activity. We've built an automatic engine that is able to learn any application and map all the possible ways in which this application should run. This way, once we know how the application should work at its very basic level, we're able to detect any piece of alien code that is being executed on the machine and which is not part of the original application code. Now, if there is a deviation from the map flow, it means that there is an alien code in there, which is basically malicious. In order to better understand our method, I added a very short simplistic example of what we're doing. There are two use cases in this slide. On the left one, a valid Microsoft Word document. On the right, a malicious Word document. So if we look at the left, let's say that we got it as an email attachment. What we do is we open Microsoft Word and we monitor the CPU in order to extract the execution flows of this application while it is rendering the Word document. So in this case, we have the green flow, the orange flow, and the blue flow. Those flows are corresponding to elements inside the document. For example, the blue flow is correspond to a font that is being loaded, the green one for an image, and the orange one for a table that you have inside your Word document. Afterwards, after we get those flows, we match them to the knowledge base that you see in the center. This is the knowledge base or the whitelist that I described in the previous slide. And once we see that everything we can say that this file is clean. On the other side of a weaponized or a malicious Word document, we're starting with the same process of opening it in Microsoft Word, extracting the execution flows, and comparing them to the knowledge base. In this case, you see that the ping flow doesn't belong to the original code of the application, and this is why we classify it as running an alien code and eventually as malicious. Now, in real life, the scenarios are much more complex for those applications, but the same basic notion still holds for real-life scenarios on very large scales. Just as a side note, Microsoft Word has more than those three flows, obviously. They have about hundreds of millions of flows. Okay, so I would like to welcome you to Fire Bus. It is free and takes only 5 minutes to run. Using the bus, you can see for yourself your email security posture against unknown attacks. You can also contact us and ask for a full demo about our products and technology. So now I welcome you to ask any questions that you like through the chat, and I will answer them.
The first question is, can you give some examples of solutions that use smart signatures?
Yeah, so a lot of solutions are actually using smart signatures like Office ATP, even G Suite, even obviously Proofpoint, and the advanced solutions, and stuff that I would say that we were surprised ourselves was that even Yahoo Mail, for example, uses smart signatures. It became sort of a commodity in that sense.
Thanks, Maor. Another question that was raised is, how long does it take to most security solutions to detect these automated variants?
So it's basically, it depends, right? The smart signatures, until the smart signatures part, so there is this gap 1 and 2 that I was talking about. So it takes them on average 18 hours. We've seen evidences of 2 hours. We've seen evidences of 48 hours. So anything in between. And those smart signatures are usually good for, I would say, 90% of the variants. Some variants do manage to evade those smart signatures, although it's the same attack, same techniques, and so on.
Any additional questions are welcome. Okay, there is another question coming in. I assume that attackers will come up with new techniques. How would you handle those?
Okay, so this is a great question. And since our detection mechanism doesn't rely on past attacks and doesn't know what an attack is actually, because we're just learning the correct behavior of the application and making sure everything is as expected. So a new trend or a new attack is not something that we should miss. This is something that we've seen in the past year and a half, that evasion techniques and obfuscation techniques keep coming out, but we haven't changed anything in our detection mechanism. I would say anything substantial, right? Other than, bugs and stuff like this, but, and this is because our unique approach. So if tomorrow there will be a new attack, whether it's a macro attack, a flash attack, a logical exploit, we will detect it, I would say, out of the box.
Thanks, Maor. Seems like there are no additional questions. So we will again encourage you to look at the attachment section of this webinar. The breach and attack simulation that Maor mentioned earlier is also available there. There are some some ebooks and other materials that might be relevant for you guys. We would like to thank you again for joining us today, and thanks, Maor.
Thank you, everyone.